As I've stated in some past episodes, self-storage appears to be positioned very well to perform in the coronavirus age and in this economic time that appears to be coming on us faster than maybe perhaps it even should. I'd like to talk about a recent white paper I've seen from Marchs Millichap that discusses it, gives some data, but also have a warning or two around that. My name's Mark Helm, and I'm the author of Creating Wealth Through Self-Storage, and I'm the creator of the Quick Start Academy. But I want to talk about a white paper that I read this week from Marchs and Millichap. They put out a paper, and it was their second major paper around the coronavirus and how self-storage appears to be performing in this new age and new reality in which we find ourselves. The cumbersome title of the white paper was Self-Storage Among the Least Challenging to Adapt to Social Distancing. New Demand to Emerge Under Reopening Strategies. Well, quite a title for an article, but I read it. What's interesting is on the first page there's a graph showing the amount of self-storage inventory, how it's gone up through new construction over the past few years, but how the vacancy is flat or just slightly up. Now again, this is a national statistic, which on the whole means very little. But I caution you, self-storage is the best asset class to be in, and there are still a lot of markets where there is demand, but I caution you to really check and also verify how the statistics are gathered. As I dug into this Marchs Millichap graph, what I realized is that they're taking inventory of all the new construction and all the new product going online, but to measure vacancy, they're only measuring stabilized facilities. In other words, they're measuring, if you're stabilized, how the new product is affecting your vacancy rate. It doesn't take into account the square footage and the vacancy rate of the new product. So, just a caution, if you're using their information and making your determination of the viability of a particular submarket. But this graph does point to a few things. It does point to the fact that more of the population is probably using self-storage. As the product comes online and there's more inventory in many of our submarkets, there's also a larger percentage of the population most likely using self-storage. We're going to have those data points very soon as this 2020 census information is fully compiled. And this trend, in my opinion, is going to be increasing in the next few years, and particularly in the next few months. As the stay-in-place orders are lifted, albeit some may be a little prematurely in some places, there's going to be an increase in demand for self-storage. I want to remind you about the CARES Act and the PPP, the payment protection loans that the SBA has put out that are wide open for self-storage operators. For every facility we own, we got a PPP loan that's helping us through this time. And the second round of it has come out, and if you haven't applied for it and you're running a self-storage facility with a payroll, I really recommend going for the second round before it's gone. It's a forgivable loan as long as you use the proceeds from this loan for your payroll and or mortgage or rent payments and utility payments. Track it very carefully, but if you spend that money on those, you won't owe it back. If you spend it on something else, you'll owe it back, but at a 1% interest charge. So in other words, they're advancing you money if you take it. Apply for it. I highly recommend it. In my opinion, one of the reasons self-storage is doing so well at the moment is because of these loans. We've never been in an economic downturn with more support that we can call on and utilize. And we talked in previous episodes about how we've changed our operations during this time, and it's a constant tweaking of that. I don't want to go into that here, but suffice it to say, we're able to do what we're doing because we're keeping our employees paid. Yes, our employees are not really interacting face-to-face with the public at the moment. Our offices are closed, but our employees are there. Our employees are still supporting customers with glass barriers in front of them. We have kiosks and websites and keypads, and literally our move-in is touchless now, and our employees are keeping the facility sanitized to help protect the public and ensuring social distancing. But because of these PPP loans, we can keep our employees going full boat. And all of this is helping the storage industry. And keep in mind that unemployment benefits, state unemployment benefits, are being enhanced to the tune of about $600 a week from the federal government. So many of our customers that have been laid off have support like our industry's gotten, so that you would be surprised. In some of our facilities, our receivables have gone up, and some of our facilities, our receivables have actually gone down. Now let's talk about cap rates for a minute. It's hard to tell if cap rates are going to go up. In other words, if pricing for self-storage is going to get a little more reasonable. But I have a feeling that it will be. I don't think you're going to see cap rates jump into 9 and 10% like they were in the mid-90s and early 2000s. But I do think you're going to see a rise in cap rates, and you're going to see sellers getting a little more realistic and willing to work with buyers. So if you look at the second graph that came out of this white paper, and you look at the 10-year Treasury average, you see it beginning to move in an opposite direction of cap rates. And what usually happens is that's an indicator that cap rates are going to rise. And again, as cap rates go up, self-storage prices go down. Now, this trend you're looking at right here could be supported by lower lending. You know, some lenders are slowing down to see what happens. In other words, they're tightening up lending restrictions. And we're seeing this is especially true for smaller local banks, local lenders, and the ones that are not so much specializing in self-storage. Also, we're seeing that many lenders are jammed up handling all of the federal loan guarantees and the PPP loans, because it's the lenders that have to take the loans and disperse the money. And this is most likely a temporary situation. And we're seeing C and B loans starting to come back slowly. But my prediction is that many of the investors are going to be sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what happens, except for some of the savvy investors that know that self-storage is the asset class to be in. So I think there's going to be some unique opportunities come up. I think many sellers, many mom and pop owners who are going towards the end of their particular hold period may be putting their facilities on the market sooner rather than later, so they can dispose of it before the economy goes into a downward turn, and many people think it will do that. And I think there's going to be some unique opportunities to get in the self-storage business. Now, I read all of this industry data because I want to stay on top of it so I can help support and guide our self-storage company. And although I believe that self-storage has a very bright future, one thing I caution you on is don't rely totally on just looking at the data and believing it. Dig a little bit into it, because if you're assuming assuming that vacancy rates are 10 to 12% in your submarket, you may be in for a real surprise if you haven't dug a little deeper. What I did notice is in the stabilized properties that we owned, and when new self-storage came online in those submarkets, that is about how our vacancy rate moved. Our vacancy rate probably moved from 8% to 12% vacancy for the stabilized properties. But it's a whole different picture if you're bringing new space online in submarkets where there is aggressive lease-up already happening. So just be aware of that. I'm not saying don't do it, but be aware of it and don't rely solely on the data that you see. What I've discovered is pricing tells you a lot. Pricing in a submarket, not in a city, that unless it's a small town, pricing in a city doesn't tell you a whole lot, but pricing in those submarkets really does. There's a lot of information in the pricing and in the incentives being offered. You can see upward trends or downward trends. Downward trends point to an abundance of supply. So don't just go with vacancy rates you see in reports like this. Dig deeper. There are many submarkets that need this product. And I'm also noticing around population data, I'm beginning to question that somewhat in some of these feasibility reports and in the data aggregation reports I'm getting from some of our vendors we subscribe to. But if you stop and think about it, it makes sense. Mostly the population data we're seeing right now was data that was gathered in 2010 and has been extrapolated forward based on 2010 information. I realize there's nothing you can do about it till the 2020 census data is available, but I'm beginning to notice a slight disconnect in some submarkets between what the data is telling me and what we're seeing on the ground. I sure will be glad when the 2020 census data is complete. So thank you very much. I look forward to being with you again soon as we explore the world of self-storage.